What is up, players and playettes? It's your least favorite land investor, or your favorite, coming at you guys with a new video talking about something that's really interesing that I think you guys are going to enjoy. If you guys are new here, my name is Sumner Healey. I run a business called landinvestor.co. And these videos, we go and take questions out of our Discord and answer them in real time on YouTube for you. If you guys want to join our Discord, it's landinvestor.co/apply. Also, we've capped all seats for LIA at 15 spots a month. That ain't changing anytime soon. If you guys want to get on the wait list, landinvestor.co/apply. We are turning away about 90% of people that come our way every month in an effort to focus on quality over quantity. So one of our LIA members, Ben, has got a great question. He says, anyone have a rule of thumb they use when underwriting value add deals for how much it costs to run a road and utilities? Something like XX per linear foot, underwriting a value add deal that has legs, but I'll actually have to go through the process of a minor subdivide. All right, before I get into this, I must just say this. I'm going to speak in generalizations, and I don't want anyone to think that I am the value add expert. In fact, I've never had to pay to pull a water line. I've never had to pay to pull power lines. I've been very close when I've had to underwrite it, but I'm not going to pretend like I know everything about this. I also don't want you to assume that there's just some blanket answer that applies to every state and every county. This is going to range wildly. But anyways, there's a few kind of subtle averages that we can use here, okay? So first thing, let's talk about cutting in a road. Now, there's obviously so many different kinds of roads we can cut. Dirt road, gravel road, asphalt. I'm going to just keep it really simple here. If we're talking about like a dirt road, gravel road maybe, what I've seen to be pretty standard is $8 to $12 per linear foot, okay? So you're doing a mile, multiply that, and you can figure out roughly what it's going to cost you. Now, in my opinion, I think topographies are going to play into that cost. But let's just assume you're on a flat level surface. Okay, so that's dirt road. Now, if we look at creating asphalt roads, this is where things start to get pretty crazy. What I've been quoted or what I've seen is about $80 per linear foot. So you're looking at about 10x what it costs to cut in a dirt road. And that's why in most value add situations, if I see a paved road is required opposed to dirt roads, I'm probably heading the other way. It just rarely makes sense, in my opinion, to go through the pain and the expense of paving roads. Funny story, when I was growing up in Big Sur, once a year, we'd actually go and pave our own road or patch it up. Before we moved into the winter, we had this kind of hybrid dirt and pavement road, at least for half of it. Then it turned into all dirt road. We had a very steep cliff you had to go up, probably about 3,000 feet in elevation, maybe 2,500 feet in elevation gain. Very steep. And during the winter, that road would just get destroyed. And so in the summer and the fall, we'd actually have to go and manually go and put pavement down on it or asphalt. And it's a lot of work. I can see why it's $80 per linear foot. Okay, next one. Let's talk about running power lines. Now, from what I've seen, again, it's about $10 to $25 per linear foot to run power. In terms of all the utilities, power is going to be the most, in quotes, affordable to run. But what we've seen in terms of being a real needle mover for value, water is always the thing that gets people jumping up and down with excitement. So power, to me, is rarely the thing that I'm going to go spend the big bucks on to go and pull. It just depends, though. Especially the kinds of properties that we like to sell are more of these off-grid type properties, these ranchettes. In a lot of cases, the folks that are buying these aren't too concerned about having power lines the lot. It's more, hey, I could use a generator or solar or whatever it may be. A lot of these folks are more keen on the whole off-grid lifestyle. So if the power line is whatever, 500 feet away from the property, I'm typically not going to bother with it. Okay. Then again, depends on the market, depends on what buyers want. Now let's talk about the big cojones. I think that's inappropriate. Big kahuna is what I meant. Let's talk about running water lines. Now this is all over the freaking map. And frankly, I've never had to do this myself because every time it's come up, I'm also headed for the other direction. But what I've heard or what I've seen is about $75 to $250 per linear foot to pull water lines. Pretty insanely expensive. When we look at paving roads and water lines, in most cases, I'm out. Again, I'm not the value add expert. I don't want to pretend like I am. And so I'm always looking for the lowest hanging fruit on the value add side. I'll do some weird, hairy, bizarro flips, but for the value add stuff, where I'm at in my value add journey, keep it pretty vanilla. And I recommend you do the same. Now, obviously there's other things that we can do here in terms of, hey, maybe we're not talking about city utilities when we're talking about drilling a well. What does that cost, Sumner? Again, ranges wildly. Depends on how deep you actually have to go. There's some places you have to drill 1,000 feet or 2,000 feet. There's some places you go down 75 feet and you hit water. Kind of as a blanket, if we just had to use an average number, I think probably about 10 grand, 15 grand to drill a well. And most, like if you kind of averaged out the whole US, is probably pretty fair. But if you're out in the Southwest, could be 50 grand, could be 100 grand. Again, rarely a thing that I'm thinking about doing. Now, if I was going to go and create a 50 lot subdivision and there's no city water, maybe I would drill like a community well, a shared well, if the water table was good enough. But again, for this value add stuff in our business, we've just been looking for the lowest hanging fruit, at least for the time being. I'm sure that'll change over time. Ben, my recommendation for you, where you're at in the journey, I would be mindful about taking on these really capital intensive value add deals, right? My first value add deals, and what I recommend to most people is like, our CapEx should be like a survey and some recording fees. Like, just keep it really simple. As you get more experience, as you start to understand markets better, I think you can make some of these CapEx judgment calls. What I've learned with value add is it's even more important than just our standard flips to really know the product that you're bringing to market, people actually want it. And what do they want, right? We had a LIA member who put a fence on his property and it went like crazy. People just couldn't get enough of it. But in some markets, that doesn't really move the needle, right? So you really got to understand, like, what does that buyer avatar really want? What's most important to them? I often think that if we looked at a value add deal, let's say we're selling 10 acres, I think I'm actually going to have a better time selling my property cheaper. So let's say I'm going to sell it at $80,000 with no utilities on it, opposed to me putting the money into CapEx and selling it at 150, 160, because I got to make a little bit on those capital improvements. I think that 80K situation works out better. You just got a bigger pool of buyers. Now, there are some value add things that are just non-negotiables, right? Property's got to have good access. Okay, we can't avoid that. But pulling water lines and drilling wells and pulling power, I'm often not super keen on it. I think when we look at standard flips in terms of adding value or true subdivides and adding value, some of the best stuff you can do is improving roads or cutting in roads. That's a no-brainer. And clearing properties, clearing the underbrush, right? You might spend $1,000 to $2,500 per acre. Have someone go out there and clear the underbrush or put in little footpaths to each property. That stuff is really, really helpful. When you have a buyer pull up to a deal, value add or not, and they're just looking at lush, dense woods or brush or shrubbery, doesn't really captivate the imagination. So I think there's some value add things that I'm going to think about well before pulling water or pulling power. Now, that's just my 2 cents. Again, I am certainly not the expert on utility costs, and it probably ranges wildly throughout the US, at least that's what I've seen in my experience, but use that as a general guideline. But beyond that, if you're new to land, you can certainly take on value add deals, but be wary of these really heavy CapEx deals. My recommendation to you would be, if you have one of those deals, go find someone that's done that and partner with them. You'll be a lot safer in the process. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. If you guys want to get inside of our Discord and ask some questions and maybe even get them answered on YouTube, landinvestor.co/Discord. Like, subscribe, comment, down vote, whatever it's called, whatever you want to do. I'll see you in the next one, guys. Be well.